Wonderful to see you all. Thank you for joining us on your Friday. It's been a very busy time for many of you, I know, and appreciate you taking the time out for this really helpful conversation for everybody, just to get an insight into the awesome work that is underway and how we can all support each other in our collective impact to really put Australia onto that 1.5 trajectory. So thank you for all it is that you're each doing, and very excited to hear some more updates and where we can support in making those efforts more collaborative and stronger as a result. So hi everyone, for those of you I may not have met yet, my name is Lisa. I'm the director of the Better Futures Australia program, and that program is made up of awesome individuals like yourselves that represents all sectors of Australian society and the economy, working collectively to drive ambitious climate action and see all levels of government work collaboratively to over-deliver on our current climate commitments and deliver our fair share under the Paris Climate Agreement. So it's fantastic to see all of you here as we kick off our quarterly roundtables for 2024. And really, it's all about the multi-sectoral collaborations for finding those opportunities to complement the work you have underway and see where there's areas where we might be better at what we're doing by working together and combining forces. First, I'd like to acknowledge we're all gathering virtually on First Nations land. So I'm speaking to you from Yagara and Turrbal country, and I extend my deepest respects to elders past and present. I recognise their enduring stewardship and care of this country that enables me and others to enjoy its beautiful places today. And I really see it as a privilege to live and work in Meanjin, Brisbane, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. I encourage everyone that's joined us today to jump in the chat and share the countries you're each joining this call from today. And if you do want to add your voice to the discussion, please do chime in with where you're calling in from. A special acknowledgement to Linda Keeby from the Indigenous Peoples Organisation Australia, who'll be joining us to give an update on the Environment Subcommittee and the work they're doing through bringing in the traditional knowledges and insights to strengthen our work further for putting us on that 1.5 trajectory. So a quick summary for those of you new to this space. Better Futures Australia is a non-partisan alliance of climate champions and organisations representing all sectors of society and the economy, and we're ready to work together, including with all levels of government, to over-deliver on Australia's climate commitments. And together, I have the pleasure of introducing you to not only all the awesome sector leaders out there working in our working groups and various initiatives, but also our growing team. So if you guys are happy to give a wave, we've got Jordan Hodgson, our operations manager, our part-time events and partnerships lead, Kira Denham, and our newest member for digital communications is Quimby Mills. So over the past 3 years, these quarterly roundtables have been a really invaluable space to offer us time to both celebrate the achievements and also look at how we can collectively work towards those objectives we all share for a safe climate for Australia and doing our fair share in the global space, but also identifying where there are challenges and gaps and where we can help each other out to overcome those. So there's been a lot of developments I'm sure you're all tracking in the news recently, from South Australia increasing their 100% renewable energy target by bringing the date forward a couple of years, which is really exciting. We're seeing the consumer-led behaviours with the increasing adoption of electric vehicles, but we're also seeing the challenges with social license backlash on the renewables transition. And yeah, there's a lot of other challenges still that remain. So a lot of important work that you're each doing. So please do feel free to share any specifics today in the discussion, and we'll see where there's opportunities to bring together and combine forces to support there. So just a quick overview of today's agenda before I hand over to Kira to speak to you briefly about the Better Futures Forum. We've got just a quick insight to the Better Futures Australia plans for the year and where you might be able to build on the work that we're doing and use that to strengthen your own outcomes. Then we'll jump to some updates from, we've got Lee Eubank, awesome that Lee is here to share a bit about the plans for a national campaign that's about to kick off. We've got Kelly Court from the Australian Council of Social Service, who'll give us a quick insight to the Fair, Fast, Inclusive Blueprint. And then we'll look to some other emerging climate advocacy policy priorities with Michaela from Climate Work Centre to share just a couple of examples of how we can collectively leverage this shared moment that we're planning for September. And then we'll finish the call with our typical roundtable discussion with a chance for everyone to jump on for a couple of minutes to share what their priorities are and where we can work together and support you. And then we'll wrap with a few reminders and what's next. So really looking forward to that. So let's get started, and really looking forward to hearing about all that you're doing. It's always inspirational coming off these calls. So I will now introduce and hand you over to Kira Denham, Better Futures Australia's Events and Partnerships Coordinator, to give you an overview of our plans for the Better Futures Forum and how they're coming together based on advice from an awesome advisory committee and others, and really give you a sense of how you can get involved and help us to make that as impactful as possible. Thanks, Kira.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kira, coming from Bundjalung Nation in the Northern Rivers, and have been with the Better Futures team for 6 months now. My role is to lead the Better Futures Forum happening in September in Canberra. And yeah, today I just want to give you a overview of where we're at and make sure that we're getting your ideas and expertise for advocacy priorities for the forum. So I've got some slides I'll share. So we have, and let me know if my internet's too bad, and I can pass it over to you, Lisa.
Just make it full screen, click on the share slideshow.
Slideshow.
Yep.
Kira, I'm just conscious of time. Maybe we'll bring on Rochelle and Kelly.
Screen. Okay.
We'll bring on Kelly and Rochelle now, and then we'll come back. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right. Kelly, Rochelle, are you there? Would you be happy to jump in and give the quick update on the Fair, Fast, Inclusive Blueprint? Very excited to hear about that.
Yep. So Rochelle will go first, and then I'll follow. Thanks.
Happy to do that. Thank you. So, sorry, just for context, ACOS has a campaign, the Fair, Fast and Inclusive Climate Change Action. Its goal is really to target the federal government to act to reduce emissions fast, but in ways that are equitable and inclusive. And that's so that people who are experiencing financial and social disadvantage are also able to benefit from the transition to a clean economy, as well as build their resilience to the climate change impacts that we know are already locked in. So the campaign strategy is essentially to engage and build community sector and ally support to advocate for the campaign asks, and also to secure politician support and build some cross-party consensus. So it has a number of components. We have an overarching blueprint framework document that many of you on this call have contributed to. And that document sets out a vision for where we want climate change action to take us. It has 7 principles that should underpin climate change and related policy. And it identifies 12 policy areas for action. And then it has 5 key asks of the federal government, one of them being to amend the Climate Change Act to better encompass equity and inclusion. We have a fair, fast and inclusive website with information and resources about how to get involved in the campaign. And we will be developing, in collaboration with the community sector and allies, a more detailed policy document looking at those 12 different policy areas. And we'll also establish a community of practice for organisations that would like to get involved in the campaign, but need some support around that. And then we have a number of advocacy actions kind of leading up to the next election. And we have been engaging in advocacy actions all along as well. So we have an online launch of the Blueprint Framework coming up, very exciting for us, on the 16th of April. We'll be sending out invites next week to sign on to both the Blueprint Framework and to register for the launch. So at the launch, you'll be able to hear a bit more about the framework. You'll hear from speakers with lived experience about why equity and inclusion are critical in climate change policy. You'll also be able to hear about what practical advocacy actions you can take going forward and where to get further information and resources. So hopefully that gives you some idea about what's coming up.
Thanks, Rochelle. And I was just going to add that one of the policy areas we have already been doing a deep dive and a fair bit of advocacy in, which is around home energy upgrades, so energy efficiency, electrification, renewable energy, prioritising low-income households. So we've been coordinating large coalitions and working with allies around that. So leading up to the May budget, we're doing a fair bit of work around asking the government to set up a fund specifically to allocate funding for low-income housing to boost the 300 million from last May, which will only upgrade 15% of social housing. So we're basically asking them to allocate funding that will do all social housing and prioritise First Nations social housing. And that we've been working with stakeholders to develop some pilot studies on how to implement some of these home energy upgrades. So we've been working with local councils, and great to see Scott, who really on the call today, who really led that piece of work for Victorian local councils that we're engaging with federal government on. We've been working with First Nations groups in Northern Territory about prioritising First Nations social housing upgrades there, and then looking at how we can improve the ACT's current home energy scheme to better target low-income housing, including private rentals. So we're trying to pilot some different ways of implementing these home energy upgrades. And of course, continuing an advocacy around the need for mandatory energy performance rental standards. So they're sort of key priorities for us over the next few months in the budget, but will also be a key priority in the lead up to the election. Thanks, Lisa.
No, thank you, Kelly and Rochelle, for all the great work that you're doing. And yeah, just a great example of the collaboration too with Scott's involvement there. So very positive developments. And yeah, please do let us know if there's any specific follow-up actions that we can encourage the Better Futures Australia community to get behind, and very keen to continue this work out to early next year. So let's see how we can leverage the September event to continue these conversations post this federal budget and in the lead up to the early March budget next year. So thank you both. Do you think you'll both jump on towards the end of this call just to involve yourselves in the broader discussion?
Yep. So we just got a meeting with the PM's office to lobby for these funding, and then we'll come back. So
excellent. Good luck. Wishing you all the best. Excellent. Thank you both. All right, so we'll come back to Kira. I think I'll share the slides for Kira. She's got a bit of internet trouble today, and if the audio is a fail, I'll jump in and try and do my best to represent Kira's awesome work on shaping up the Better Futures Forum. And then after that, we'll hand over to Lee and Michaela to outline a bit more about how that program is shaping up. So we'll just share my screen. And Kira, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry about the internet. I'm slightly more at bush today. Amazing to hear from and Kelly at
Kira,
ACOS,
you're still breaking up a bit. Did you want to just turn your camera off, and we'll just
that clarifying that the four.
Kira, would you like to turn your video off, and we'll just listen to you?
Yes, fantastic to hear from initiatives like this. Yep, videos off. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, the platform in September, the Better Futures Forum, is really a platform for initiatives that organizations like ACOS are lobbying for, and a way to support each other in that collective impact needed to reach a 1.5 aligned government policies. So this year's event is again a follow-on from the previous two events held in Canberra on the 10th and 11th of September. It's a key moment when industry and community and government come together to design and shape climate policies that better inform. A 24 event is going to be another strategic high energy event that continues the legacy influential figures that to engage in these important initiatives. So this year we've secured the National Film and Sound Archive as our first key sponsor. They're going to be the main venue for the forum. And I think this is an important, sorry, I'm getting a lot of, sorry, my internet's really bad. So
I'm happy to
National
attempt
Film and Sound
if you want, Kira.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. Internet, it gets all of us sometimes. So yeah, I'll do my best to speak to what I think Kira had in mind. She is the main heart and mind behind all this. So if there's any questions, we can follow up with Kira, and she'll also be sending out an email to everyone on this call and the broader Better Futures Australia community next week with a link to a survey as well to capture all your great ideas for how we can make the most of this moment. So yeah, Kira's also done great work in bringing the ACT government on board to be a partner with this event. So we're excited for a closing ceremony on the Wednesday night at the Arboretum. So looking at some kind of fancy gala dinner, and who we can bring from the international community and other influencers to really make that a moment that the parliamentarians and others can get excited about and form some strong relationships and constructive work plans with all of us for what we can do to roll out our climate ambition and plans for the next 3 years. So there's a 2-day program where there'll be plenary sessions and also breakouts. So we're talking to Climate Change Authority and other partners about how we make the most of some theme and policy focused discussions, and these will be in alignment with a big civil society campaign. But really the focus of the Better Futures Forum, as Kira mentioned, is to bring those unique voices from across Australian society and the economy, all corners geographically, to Canberra to speak to climate action in their own way. So have those business leaders, those subnational governments and others to speak to climate action and what it means in their context, in their place-based narrative. So Lee will speak to the civil society campaign in a moment and how we can complement that with these voices. So very keen to build out some specific ideas, and Michaela will share a bit about the thinking going on in Climate Works Centre shortly. So Kira is working with a stellar group of individuals, some of which you can see on this slide here, some of you on the call today, thank you for joining us. And they're really advising on how best to shape the overarching narrative around the event, as well as what we need to make sure is centered in the program. So there's also a number of partners coming on board, and we're also looking for sponsors. So if there's a specific side event or panel or activity that you would really like to leverage this platform and use to get the policy outcomes or the media narrative out there, please do approach us, and let's see what we can do around this. And we're also talking with our health stakeholders about a session at Parliament on the Monday night beforehand to how we can bring together health leaders, nurses, doctors, to meet with decision makers in Parliament to look at what it will actually cost and the engagement work that is being overlooked for the actual implementation of the new health and climate strategy. So that's just one example of many that we are looking to what we can do around. In terms of the objectives, Kira's outlined it beautifully on this slide. It's a platform for the sector leaders, those unique voices that you don't typically see out there talking to why Australia needs to take ambitious action on climate and how it's a normal part of the day-to-day, increasing that public and private sector support across all corners of Australia to make it a normal mainstream thing that's happening. Also bring in those international spokespeople, so our Pacific neighbours and other key voices from major trading partners for why it is also a reasonable thing to be considering, in particular in those energy export regions, for what the future jobs and the future economy looks like. And importantly, those relationship building sessions with the departmental staffers, the Climate Change Authority and the parliamentarians and their advisors while we're in Canberra. What can we do to make the most of this opportunity and get them in a room to hear all the diverse perspectives at one point in time, so we can really have those constructive conversations about how we can all work together to deliver on Australia's climate goals. And then, of course, the big ticket item, will Australia and a Pacific neighbour co-host COP in a couple of years' time? And what can this community do to work with government to make sure we put our best face forward and make sure that that platform is not a greenwashing platform, but one where we're actually sharing good practice ideas and working constructively with our peers globally to decarbonise the global economy and do all we can to keep warming to 1.5. And so the point of difference for Better Futures Australia is really our breadth of unique voices and organisations engaged. So there's lots of great events and activities happening. Typically they're sector focused. So how can we bring it all together? Because we all know that we really do need everything everywhere all at once if we're going to deliver on Australia's sectoral plans and the broader ambitions. So yeah, that's our point of difference. And then the tagline we're working on with the advisory committee is, this is our moment to shape Australia's story of shared prosperity, future industries and resilient communities. So there's lots of opportunities there with the media narrative that will surround this moment. The themes, we've got electrifying our future. So these are all, they've been co-curated to align with the campaign that Lee will speak to you about shortly. So yeah, electrifying our future, what that means for cities, towns, states, territories, the community organisations out there, the clean exports and manufacturing initiatives with industry and private investors, the work that Kelly and Rochelle were talking to about household energy upgrades and reducing energy costs and addressing the cost of living crisis, and then the climate readiness and resilience piece. So resilient and regenerative futures, so adaptation, impacts, ecosystem restoration and nature-based solutions, and then the well-being economy. So we've got the Intergenerational Fairness Coalition and another number of other Better Futures Australia partners and organisations working to engage the Treasurer's Office and others on different ways of planning for Australia's future. So this is also incorporating the just transition piece and cultural inclusivity with our rapidly growing population and development. So what does the future economy of Australia look like? And that is my timer, so I will wrap up, I've got one more slide. So yeah, I'll hand over to Lee. So yeah, the National Climate Solutions Package, the program will be focused and centered around those place-based narratives. So if you have any case studies out there or initiatives you're working in key regions, please do approach us, reach out, and we'd love to feature that at the event. We'll have a public launch in Sydney on the 21st of April. We'd love for all of you to be there. And tickets will open on the 1st of May. We'll follow up with a partner promotion pack, which I'm sure you're used to receiving from everywhere. And that is me. So Lee Eubank, I am feeling very lucky to introduce you to everybody on this call. And yeah, looking forward to hearing your overview of the National Climate Solutions Package. Thanks for joining us, Lee.
Thanks, Lisa. It's so good to be here with the Better Futures Australia network. I really appreciate the opportunity. So, yeah, Lisa did mention the film Everything Everywhere All at Once. I feel like that's what I've been working on for the last 9 months. And given that I have about 3 minutes, please consider this the teaser trailer. And the feature film is coming in a few weeks, and you'll all be inspired by it, I reckon. So just as a little bit of background, my name is Lee Eubank. I'm the Climate Outreach Manager for Solutions for Climate, which is a federal advocacy project with Canada. At the end of 2022, there was a meeting of climate movement strategists to figure out what is the movement's climate policy agenda once the climate targets and the safeguard mechanism reforms had been delivered. And from that meeting emerged this concept of these 2 tracks of work. So one being clean in and one being dirty out. And around the time that this meeting was held, we saw the passage of the United States Inflation Reduction Act. So this is the breakthrough investment package that the United States Congress passed that will incentivize the rollout of electric vehicles and clean technology, electrification at the household level, and boost domestic manufacturing of those technologies. So emerging from that meeting, there was this question: what would a historic climate package look like for Australia? One that delivers community benefit, accelerates the decline of emissions, and gets us in line with that 1.5 degree trajectory. And how do we do it in a way that actually deals with disadvantage and inequality in our communities? So over the last 9 months, a startup team of representatives from the climate movement, union movement, community sector, and clean tech sector have been designing a strategy and a policy package to achieve that outcome. So importantly, we are seeking to build a coalition campaign that unites those 4 sectors. What we've come up with is this policy diamond that will be a vessel for organisations, for local governments, private sector, community organisations to fill with their own aspirations and their own hopes. The policy diamond will seek to secure federal government support for clean electric homes and communities, climate readiness, like clean tech exports, and renewable energy rollout. And at the heart of the package, we have a commitment to climate justice values. So we want it to deliver community benefit, have first-rate engagement with First Nations people, and deliver jobs for the community. So in terms of winning that outcome, we're going to have to focus our effort on securing the commitment from the Prime Minister and the Treasurer. The strategy will be an integrated approach that has some place-based organising, public narrative building, inside track work around the sectoral plans, and a big effort on coalition building. So I reckon there is a really tremendous opportunity for members of the Better Futures Australia network to assist with the coalition building, helping us identify case studies and stories, helping us identify the places for on-the-ground organising and town hall meetings to make sure that we're capturing the community's vision. And if you'd like to be involved, please just email me or contact Lisa and I'll fill you in with more details. That's my 3 minutes. yeah, very happy to take questions if there's time.
Thank you so much, Lee. We'll go to Michaela before we go to questions, if that's okay. I know we're running a bit behind, but hopefully it'll be within the next 5 minutes. So Michaela is the partnerships and engagement coordinator at our stellar group of colleagues through ClimateWorks Centre, working on various initiatives, including advising on the Climate Change Authority and government's sectoral plans. So Michaela, would you be happy to just share your thinking as one of the advisory committee members for the Better Futures Forum too, around how the ClimateWorks Centre will engage in this event? Thanks, Michaela.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa. Hi, everybody. It's my first time to one of these roundtables, and it's really good to get to know all the faces. Yes, so ClimateWorks, as you know, we've got quite a breadth of work that we're working on, and there's just so many things that I think one of the challenges of the steering committee for the forum right now is the breadth of everything that is going on. Some of the themes that you've been showing today is really helping form some of our thinking. So one of the things that we're doing internally is looking at the opportunity come September. This year is a year that we can really try and raise ambition and make that impact, potentially, you know, with the COP31 coming and Nature Positive, you know, the Better Futures Forum is actually going to be leading into that Nature Positive timing for that conference. So we're really thinking about how can we maximize what we get out of it. We're looking to do internally, I'm working with our system teams to maybe put down on paper some proposals of ideas for different parts of the forum. And I would like to suggest that is something that we across the network might want to start thinking of doing. I think putting a couple proposals together and being able to see where we might have overlaps and synergies will really help us move as a steering committee to getting a program really underway. The opportunities that we're seeing at the moment are around, like we do already have the local government climate review that's going to be, we've talked about being launched at the forum. We at ClimateWorks have some reports that might be benchmarking reports about state government and things that we might try and align with that timing. So having, you know, a coordinated approach around knowing what kind of things are coming around at that time of year is going to be really useful and I think make a greater impact. The other side of things, which I'm sure my colleagues Olivia and Tracy will speak to a little bit later in this meeting, we're thinking a lot about the nature positive, we're thinking a lot about nature-based solutions and some of the things coming out of ClimateWorks with our Luto modelling and some of the engagement that we will be looking to do this year. So there's a lot of different things that we're hoping to do. But in terms of the process between now and the actual forum itself, we're hoping, and I'm going to put out to the rest of the forums, this steering committee as well, to go through a little bit more of a proposal type process. And I'm going to coordinate that with Lisa and see how that will come together. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Lisa. Luto, for those who are not with the acronym, that is our land use trade-off model that we've been developing. We're in Luto 2. And if you want to know more about that, Tracy is your person. I think I've 17 seconds left. I think I did all right.
That was awesome. Thanks, Michaela. Yeah, so we've got Michaela and Lee here as two key minds doing a lot of thinking about how we can leverage this shared moment in September. So while we've got them for the next 9 minutes, does anyone have any questions or comments or thoughts, ideas to test? Yeah, to feedback after hearing their ideas and plans for the broader networks. Please do use the raise hand function or feel free to just unmute and chime in. Oh, Andrew, there we go. That saves me having to ask Lee a question. Yeah,
Exactly.
Thanks, Andrew.
Exactly. It's less of a question and more of a comment. And it's, oh no, it could be a question as well. Sorry, it's Friday. I'm speculating here. it's less about all the good individual work that's going on and more about I don't know, a diagrammatic representation of where and what element of that is really important to the Australian community. Because increasingly we get feedback from our members, and I suspect this is true of others, that you know that all of these individual elements are going on, but what does that mean in an Australian context? What does it mean in relation to that sector? Is there some, and because that it starts to reveal the gaps. So Lisa, you'll appreciate the work that the Griffith University has done in relation to mapping the legislation. And it's a very basic thing, but they've gone and done it on an Australian map that then helps you understand, well, that's what's happening when you look at it in South Australia in relation to law and regulation and various activities. And I just think that kind of graphic, by saying, well, the great work of Climate Works in this area relates to all of Australia, and these are the sectors, community, business, government, academia, that are playing a role in it. Just so that people constantly understand that it is not an individual programmatic thing that's happening in one little part of the Australia. It's actually got a much broader and hopefully increasingly coordinated narrative to solve the problem. That would be my only observation so far.
I think that's a great observation, Andrew. Coordinated narrative around, what it's going to take for all of us to step up and solve this problem. So Lee, that kind of also resonates with what I was going to follow up as a question, and also Michaela with the work that Climate Works Centre is doing in more an advisory and expert body rather than on the advocacy face. So I think between the two of you, you've got that nice evidence to advocacy relationship there. So in terms of what Andrew's highlighting around the public facing narrative and the subnational governments and working with civil society on more of the activism community, do you see anything you think we should, I guess, be cautious of, or anything we should try and lean towards there? And we've got 1 minute, so sorry. Oh no, we've got 4 minutes. Sorry, 4 minutes for both of you. So 2 minutes each if you want to have a crack at that one. Thanks, Lee.
Cool. Yeah, I'll jump in. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I think, clearly, like, I've been campaigning for climate action since the bloody noughties, despite my youthful appearance. And, it strikes me there's no shortage of ideas. There's no shortage of campaigns. One of the things that we can unite around is that the transition is underway. It's happening. Communities and all across different sectors of the economy have ideas. What unites them all is this need for greater support from the federal government. And that's what the Big Ask campaign will be pursuing. It will be calling for the federal government to commit to a historic climate solutions package. A lot of that will require greater investment. So the budget is one of the intervention points. But also there will be some regulatory measures that get, pulled into the orbit of that campaign. So I think the transition is underway. The climate science demands that we accelerate, and the community issues around social license of the transition require that we have community benefit. And the Big Ask campaign is an attempt to square the circle on those things.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. And I think from a Climate Works perspective, we're really in the business of figuring out what good looks like. How do we actually manage to get to the getting to point 1.5? So, I mean, a lot of it is, I mentioned Luto before, it is about figuring out what do we need to do with land use change, for example. What does that look like? What are how are we going to figure out what changes we actually need to do, and giving support into government and decision makers across the board on how to actually make the changes. So that is where we kind of see we're not the public advocacy side of that. We have so many other, colleagues and supporters and groups who are out there doing that. And we are very thankful for that. We're in the business of trying to give that kind of, standard of what we can try and work towards in the practicalities. So I think with us being a part of Better Futures Australia, really kind of that's meshes the two sides of the coin of what we need to actually get action going forward.
Beautiful responses. Thank you both. And yeah, thank you, Andrew, for your comment there too. So I'd like to just give a huge thank you to Lee and Michaela for chiming in on how we can use this shared moment. And we've got this window now in the lead up to an early federal budget in March. The nuances and trying to lock in the commitments ahead of our current May budget, I'm sure is front of mind for many of you. The long-term, well, medium term really for the next 3 years of federal government and how we all work collectively with them to over deliver on Australia's commitments. I think there's a lot of awesome initiatives underway, great work happening. And if we bring all sides of that coin in, as I think it was Michaela that used that phrase, I think that's a beautiful, beautiful way forward. So thank you both. I'll let you escape if you need to. We'd warmly welcome you hanging around for our round of sector priority updates, which we're about to jump into. And if anybody would like to have a follow-up chat with Michaela or Lee to brainstorm ideas too, please do reach out and we can make that happen. So now is for the meat of these quarterly roundtables, hearing about all the great work underway from each of our working groups and our partner initiatives. So we've got a number of excellent individuals on the line with a lot of updates. So I've cruelly given you each 2 to 3 minutes. So Jordan will set a timer and you'll see that on your screen when you start talking. So please do be mindful of that. There is a lot of us and we really do want to hear from everyone. And then we're recording this and we'll send around a summary and follow up on any cross-sectoral collaboration opportunities we identify through what you share with us too. So please do be prepared to follow through with us chasing you to collaborate as well. So I have firstly the pleasure to introduce you to the excellent Linda. So Linda Kivers is a board member of the Indigenous Peoples Organisation Australia. Unfortunately, Uncle Ray Minikin and Kathy Etuk are otherwise occupied meeting with the former president of Anote Tong, who is in Australia at the moment from our Pacific neighbours. So they're busy engaging with First Nations across the region and seeing how we can be better neighbours, which is awesome, and how we can support their efforts. So Linda, very happy that you're joining us to give insights to the great work that you're all leading. And yeah, please do share with us how we can better support and collaborate. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lisa. And I love the Better Futures. I found the IPO through the Better Futures, interestingly enough, a couple of years ago. But I guess the most noteworthy thing for the IPO and our focus at the tail end of last year was the Pacific Regional Gathering held in Port Douglas that had, I think, 92 participants, 54 First Nations from Australia and the Pacific. I think Caleb was on here. Caleb attended that to boot from Canna. A key part of that work, it was a UN mandated event under the UNFCCC. And it was the first time a Pacific Regional Gathering had taken place. So it had support from DQ and the NIAA, as well as contributing to the restructure of the First Nations Working Group under the UN. The other initiatives that come out of that is an Indigenous decision-making workshops to be held in mid-May, I think, in Sydney, where 10 community determined projects from the Pacific region and 5 from Australia will be supported to develop business cases ready to get them funding ready from, international funders for those climate mitigation projects. What they look like is obviously up to the community, but that's an awesome piece of work. The other major piece that's come out of the Pacific Regional Gathering is more connectivity between Australian First Nations and First Nations Pacific Islanders. I mean, some of the land management techniques it was really interesting to see New Zealand First Nations talk to the need for fire burning, for example, and reach out to First Nations Australians on how to better land manage and restore certain areas. But I think that's a growing piece of work, and we're just now getting the benefits of that connectivity and those creating a safe space, I think, for climate mitigation, restoration, resilience. So, I mean, that would be pretty awesome. I can't see my time clock. Oh, there it is at the top. Oh, I see it on Jordan's screen. But beyond that, the next advocacy point for us is the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. This year we'll focus on youth. We're sending over, supporting a delegate to attend who will also speak to climate resilience at a number of side events in the US and in New York. So I'm really excited to see how that shakes out, to have our young folk go over and talk to what we need. Another part of the follow-up is, there's an emerging Pacific group of leadership that Kathy's and Ray are at the meeting today to try and talk to the Pacific Elders group about coordinating and getting narratives together and those support networks, which I think will be really exciting. I've got 9 seconds. And then I think the budget priorities for us will be holding the federal government to account on the Productivities Commission's review on First Nations closing the gap targets, where the only 2 of the 4 targets that are on track are land and sea country. So we really want to make sure that there's no regression across that gap. That's me. I was under by 20 seconds, so apologies.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Linda. And yeah, with the various issues and opportunities that'll be highlighted in the discussion to follow, we'll definitely follow up where we see synergies and ways to support and complement all of that great work underway. And please do, encourage your IPO colleagues to stay looped in and see how we can bring in voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders and communities to leverage the platform in September and out to other key moments. So yeah, thank you for all the work you're doing.
No problem.
And any questions for Linda before she scoots off on this call, please do put them in the chat, and Linda can also take them back to IPO Australia colleagues for their next huddle as well. So next up, I'll pick on you, Scott, to give us an update and insights to recent activities among the local government councils and cities working group. Thanks for joining us, Scott.
Thank you, Lisa, and hello to everybody online. So yeah, it was back in about September, October last year that all the Victorian councils teamed up together and wrote to both federal and state members, ministers around more strategic partnership opportunities around and using a multi-level governance type approach. So many of you on the line will be familiar with the Many Hands Make Light Work report, which called for this type of approach to sort of turbocharge climate action and give those at the front line in the local communities a voice at the policy sort of design making table. Some of that correspondence called out and made responses to the federal government's energy savings package, and particularly what our council saw as shortfalls in the Home Energy Upgrade Fund, which they by largely referred to as middle class welfare. So there were a lot of concerns with this not really going, these funds not really going to those who needed it the most, specifically the low income and vulnerable households, many of whom are the target cohort of the programs that our councils are running on the ground at the moment. So yeah, it was great. And as previously mentioned by Kelly at ACOS, sort of things aligned with her report going into the federal government. And yeah, we were lucky enough to be asked to put a proposal to Minister McAllister, which is now sort of turned into a broader package of options to be considered in the upcoming budget, targeting vulnerable low-income communities, both here in Victoria, and there's also a couple of other pilots in other states as part of that piece of work. Many of you probably saw that the Champs Pledge, the Australian government signed up to that at COP28. So that is the Coalition for Higher Ambition Multi-Level Partnerships. Bit of a mouthful. But hopefully this is a mechanism by which the voluntary action taken by councils, etc., can be recognised in our nationally determined contributions. There's a lot of work still to be done in exactly what that looks like and how it will play out in practical terms. So yeah, Better Futures Australia Working Group is certainly putting some thinking in around that, and want to be part of those discussions. Yeah, the group had the chance to meet with the Federal Minister for Local Government, Minister McBain, last month. I wasn't part of that, but I've got a few cheek notes from Lisa, who sent me through them before the show. So that was suggested that we follow up through some of that multi-level governance work and connect through the regional Development Australia networks for pathway for collaboration. Chasing up opportunities for council involvement in the national urban policy development. The 2024 local government climate review was also mentioned earlier. We're hoping to present the findings at the BBF forum in September, so stay tuned for that. And I'm out of time, so I might just draw it there, and I'm happy to answer questions in the chat and stuff. And thanks for that beep there, Jordan.
Very well behaved of you, Scott. Thank you. And yeah, lots of great work underway through the local government working group. So if anyone ever has any ideas for how we can leverage the networks there, with more than 200 of Australia's councils and cities really as a supporting base, and including the capital city Lord Mayors, very powerful voices if you ever need them. So please do reach out, and yeah, also think about how you can support their key priority asks around multi-level governance and really bringing the voice of those on the front lines with their communities to the decision-making table. So next I'll hand to Holly to give us an update of the Transport Working Group and the great initiatives underway to decarbonise the transport sector. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I think, sorry, please let me know if there's too much background noise, but the transport group, I think, has been working around 4 main areas. So the first one, as I'm sure many people would have seen, it's a very public battle at the moment around the new vehicle efficiency standard. So public consultation for that closed the most recent round in early March. And yeah, we're hoping that that will be tabled in Parliament later this month and then discussed in mid-May. And then ideally, well, the government has committed to or said that they'd like to have the standards actually start by the 1st of January 2025. But yeah, as I mentioned, it's quite a heated debate between the car industry and climate groups, and then and EV groups as well at the moment, and lots of misinformation being spread by car companies and by the coalition, as is the norm, unfortunately. So that's the main one, and really the movement is trying to back in as strong a standard as possible, and really counter the misinformation by the coalition and by those more laggard car brands. And the second one, big piece, is the Transport and Infrastructure Net Zero Roadmap and Action Plan, which is a mouthful, as you can hear, but essentially that's one of the sectoral pathways looking at transport and infrastructure. And yeah, ideally, I think hopefully we're going to be seeing a first top line draft by the end of March. And yeah, we're really looking to ensure that gets us on a pathway for rapid emissions reduction within transport. And in terms of kind of broader collaboration, I think the Canna Transport Group is looking to do a joint statement of what we're calling for and kind of broad goals of the transport roadmap after it's released. So one to keep an eye out if you would be interested. The next one is around fuel tax credits. So I believe Australian Conservation Foundation and a bunch of other great organisations like ACOS are pushing a campaign to end the $1.5 billion handout through the fuel tax credits to coal, oil and gas companies and the industry. So they're in the process of finalising that and would be looking for other organisations to sign on. So keep an eye out for that one. And then, the last piece, I think, really amongst the groups, and everyone's been quite focused on the new vehicle efficiency standard at the moment and getting that locked in. But other than that, I think there's a really big focus on mode shift and kind of socializing amongst decision makers, the public, even our movement, of the need to shift to public transport and active transport, as well as high electrification. And yeah, I think that's done.
Perfect timing. Well done, Holly. Did you practice that one? Excellent. Lots of great stuff happening there too, and I will speed things along. So we've got the excellent chair of the Materials and Embodied Carbon Leaders Alliance also on the call with us today, Hudson Wesley. So I'll hand over to you, Hudson, for an update on all the great things underway.
Terrific. Thanks, Lisa, and thanks everybody for having MECLA at the table. MECLA is an industry collaboration set up by WWF, Climate Kick, and my consultancy Precinct, really to bring the construction ecosystem together. Very happy to say after about 2.5 years of operations, we have 160 members from across construction, and that's suppliers of materials, designers, engineers, procurement professionals, government, which includes state governments, New South Wales, ACT, South Australia, Victoria, Queensland, and soon, also engaging WA. And in Canberra, we've got DISA and DECU. I think they're acronyms you guys will all know. So really engaging. We've also got contractors and builders, standards and codes. The idea is that no one part of construction or infrastructure can drive a cut in embodied carbon unless the whole system moves at one. So we are really working on engagement, collaboration, understanding what others are doing so that each party has the confidence to move forward. Momentum is building, very happy to say. There's now a NABERS tool, National Australian Built Environment Rating system being developed, the NABERS tool for embodied carbon. The Australasian Procurement and Contractors Council have a pathway to green construction. Infrastructure New South Wales, working very closely with them. They've put out a discussion paper on cutting emissions in construction and are working with us to develop a readiness index so that any entity, particularly governments who want to move on to low emission construction, will have a dashboard to understand, well, where's the industry at? Can it be done? Not just it's a nice idea, but can we actually make this happen? Infrastructure Victoria released a paper a couple of weeks ago suggesting its government align and continue the momentum south of the Murray. The South Australian government, its transport projects over $50 million now require contractors to pledge to be on a path to net zero. Another big driver that's coming up will be the mandatory reporting requirements for large organisations starting this financial year to report at the end of financial year, carbon and climate disclosures. And Scope 3 emissions are, haven't really been on the radar until recently. I was at the Green Building Council Transform conference, as was Monica Richter, who's there as well on the call. And this mandatory reporting has got Scope 3s well and truly on the agenda now. And from a fiduciary responsibility, boards are paying attention. So that's terrific. And our groundswell of activity feeds the information up so that they can bloody well get on with it, is the technical term. So yeah, we are doing a lot. The budget ask, maybe Monica, you're here, and I shouted out to WWF as the trusted broker inside MECLA to bring us all together in a pre-competition space, but you've also put in a big ask to Canberra. Do you want to talk to that?
Oh, yes. So we've got funding from the New South Wales government over the last couple of years, and we're now sort of taking our can, shaking it down in the federal government, Queensland government, other jurisdictions to see if we can raise some funds so that we can continue this work with the premise that the leaders are already doing it. And now if we want, 40% of Australia's emissions through the built environment to drive decarbonisation through the built environment, we actually need the rest of Australia to jump on board. And there's a huge number of professionals right across the supply chain, demand and supply chain, need to do that. So that's what we're shopping around at the moment. Thanks, Hudson.
Yeah, and one of the messages is there is great willingness in the leadership cohort of industry. We now need second tier and third tier suppliers and contractors to act. And those first tier are so far very willing to share, which is great because we're all in this together. Now, I'll swap hats. Our friends from ASBEC were going to be here, but Alice in Scotland asked if I could maybe just mention the project that they're working on. Now, I'm not actively engaged in that, but they are actively engaging with MECLA and our members, because ASBEC is the Australian Sustainable Built Environment Council. Monica, step in if I get this wrong, because I know you're also on that board. So many hats. It's like Edward de Bono. It's crazy. All right. So they have a big project called the Embodied Carbon Framework for the Built Environment Project, really building, collating what's been done by neighbours, by MECLA, by lots of entities, and saying, well, what does this mean for a consistency point of view across all government entities? And so there are 5 themes: leadership, measurement, demand, products, and skills. So really addressing multiple dimensions of the decarbonisation of the built environment that's required, recognising, you know, that they don't want to duplicate, they want to build on what's been done. It is a very collaborative space, happy to say, but boy, we've got a lot to do. So in a nutshell, that's us. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank
Really
you,
keen,
Hudson.
yeah, really keen
And thank you.
practically, MECLA and ASBEC, I guess MECLA very much a do tank, not lots of papers, just lots of action.
Yeah, and we love you for that, Hudson and Monica, and also Alison has put her hand up to help facilitate and share any panels or workshops that we see will bring value through the September forum. So very excited to co-design some pieces there with you all. So next up, I'm going to throw to Tracy Armstrong from ClimateWorks Centre to give us an update and insights to work underway through the various members of the Nature-Based Solutions and Land Use Collaboration. And I see Stu from WWF is also there. So yeah, thank you, Tracy, for joining us, and yeah, excited to hear updates.
No problem. My is going to be a lot less structured than everybody else. And also, Stu, really happy for you to jump in as well. So at any point, because, and I'd love to share this with you, because we do have really varied members in the NBS group that are working across a real breadth of different areas. So the area that I work on in ClimateWorks is very, very different to what Stu works on in WWF, is very, very different to our other members as well. So Stu, I'll speak to what we're doing and what I'm aware of in the group, and really happy for you to jump in as well. That's cool. So you might have noticed a couple of times we've had Luto mentioned in this group, and that is one of the projects that I work on at ClimateWorks, which is the land use trade-offs model, which is a big model that we have developed in conjunction with Deakin University. Basically, it is a temporal and spatial model for all of the Australian land mass to that will work out if we put different constraints in that say we want no new extinctions aligned with 1.5 degrees, we want agricultural productivity to stay the same, etc., what we need to do as a land mass over the next between now and 2100 to achieve that. So it's a massive model, takes 10 hours to run, needs a supercomputer, but it is really granular down to 1 kilometre grids. And what this is telling us, we're building in a whole lot of solutions in there that will pop in. A lot of them are really relevant to nature-based solutions as well. So it will tell us where we need to move from, say, a certain commodity that's being produced to environmental plantings or belt plantings or regenerative agriculture or whatever it is. And so that's a really, really massive program, which is helping us engage with government around the sectoral plans and pathways that they're putting together, not only the land and ag one that's coming up, but also the other industry ones that are coming beforehand, because obviously the land and ag sector is the only sector that can sequester as well as reduce emissions. So there's a lot of complexity in there. So that's what we're working on with the government, trying to influence more ambition in that space and trying to help them understand what these land and ag sector and all the other sectoral plans and pathways could look like in the future. I'm sorry, Stu, I took up all the time. Quickly, I'll shut up and let you speak.
That's okay. There's lots happening in terms of land management. So Nature Positive Plan of the Commonwealth Government about EPBC reforms also has a very significant impact on protecting land carbon stores, such as through reducing land clearing, native forest logging, and land degradation. The 30 by 30 challenge on land, and in C in terms of protecting 30% of lands. I noticed that there's a draft target to restore 30% of degraded land by 2030 being considered by the government for its NBSAP, the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan under the Convention on Biodiversity, the GBF. I think that's about it. And always not losing sight of the fact that the mitigation hierarchy, protect, manage, restore, not just going to tree planting through carbon offsets to the safeguard mechanism, but trying to protect existing assets. So we're not just talking about sequestering carbon from fossil fuel producers, but reducing emissions from land clearing, logging, land degradation. So it's abatement as much as sequestration. I'll leave it there. It's a good duet, Tracy.
Yeah, we do
Thank
well.
you. Lisa.
Thank you so much, Stuart and Tracy. That was a really helpful insight to others on the call. And yeah, the Global Nature Positive Summit in October, there's a huge risk that can divert the conversation, the national conversation and the global conversation in the wrong direction. So very keen for as many of you that have capacity to engage in that and help make sure it is a positive impact. So next I'll hand over to Olivia, who's joined us from ClimateWorks Centre as well, to give some insights to work underway with states and territories across Australia. Thanks, Olivia.
Thanks, Lisa. This is my first time attending this forum, so good to be here with all of you. As Michaela mentioned earlier, there's a breadth of work going on in ClimateWorks at the moment. So I work in the Sustainable Economies team. And one of the projects that we're just getting started for, I'm not sure what happened to my lights then, so apologies if I'm semi-plunged into darkness or just weirdly backlit, is we're working with the European Climate Foundation to support Australian national and subnational governments to deliver climate action in the coming decade, and doing that by developing long-term sustainable pathways to reach net zero. Again, as Michaela mentioned earlier, ClimateWorks is in the business of painting the picture of what good looks like and always aligning to a 1.5 pathway. We've implemented this project in various forms for the last few years with ECF. So this year it takes a bit of a different form, but it is building on some of the work that we've done before. So to start the project off, and we're just 3 weeks into the work for 2024, so it is just a new initiative getting underway this year. We undertake a benchmarking analysis of subnational policies, and then we measure those policies against a 1.5 aligned pathway. That develops an engagement strategy with subnational governments where we can talk about their ambition in the policy area, and where we're identifying gaps in that benchmarking analysis on an economy-wide scale, we'll be developing an opportunities report, which will be published this year, and we're aiming to publish in September.
Yeah, let's put our head together on that, but it'll be...
So we're aiming to publish that in September, and we'll align that. We've had a chat this morning about trying to align that work also with the upcoming forum in Canberra. In addition to the opportunities report, we'll also be developing 3 sector-specific reports in agriculture, buildings and transport based on that benchmarking analysis. And we've chosen those 3 priority areas to align to the 6 target sectors for the sectoral plans. All that background work essentially builds into us having convening 5 climate policy dialogue sections with state and territory governments. They're virtual dialogue events, and we'll use those to discuss the findings of the benchmarking and influence the sector on where we think that there are opportunities to align better to a 1.5 pathway. And with 15 seconds left, I'm very happy to say if there's any questions, please post them in the chat. Thank you.
Gold stars all around. Thanks, Olivia. That was a great insight, and very excited for those potential report launches around the forum in September and how we can leverage those to try and get some better outcomes from federal policy and commitments. So next up, we have Andrew Peterson, the CEO of the Business Council for Sustainable Development, who has put his hand up to give an update on behalf of our Corporate and Finance Working Group. And I've also got a bit of a summary written as an image that I'll share in the chat from Evan, who was on the call from UN Global Compact Australia, New Zealand earlier, but he had to jump off for a private appointment. So Andrew, take us away. Thank you.
Thank you for that. In terms of the group, it's true to say that it has been very much in amongst the weeds for the last few months, and those weeds are, as you would appreciate, climate risk disclosure in all of its manifestations and forms, whether at a Treasury level or internationally in relation to the work of the ISSB and now the work of the AASB. If I'd make one observation, it's the amazing collaborative attitude that the group has had in coming together, sharing what individual organisations are thinking about, some of the areas and gaps that have been identified, sharing what they could be translated to either into a combined representative advocacy position, and if not, then it doesn't matter. I think the brilliance of the collaboration has been to share, to prod, to poke, to ask, and to, if not find cohesive consensus in one document, then at least everybody knows where everybody's come from. The other that a number of us have been doing, and certainly we through BCSD have been doing, is that we sit on the peak bodies of organisations representing chartered accountants, Governance Institute, AICD, and other representative bodies in the governance space. And it's been very helpful to take the ideas and some of the challenge points back into that peak body and talk about some of the areas that the grouping within the Canada BFA approach has been taking. The thing that stunned me is that they're not in a disagreement. So in other words, there is a maturation, I think, in relation to the shared concerns that everybody has about a number of points, particularly in relation to the efficacy of the reporting to be done in a timely fashion. So the call out, for example, in relation to the BCA's recent announcement of please give us another year because we haven't done our homework, is just not washing with basically any institution anymore. So it's quite interesting they came out with that. Insofar as BCSD-A is concerned, three things. People, we welcomed onto our board at the end of the calendar year our first Indigenous business leader, which is Susan Moylan-Coombs, and that was a very deliberate exercise on behalf of the members to bring a future focus in relation to our climate advocacy and resource work that has embedded in it Indigenous considerations. And so she's been always a wonderful person to play with, but now she gets to play inside the tent, so we're very excited about that. The work of BCSD in collaboration and as part of the WBCSD is very much around accelerating climate action this year. And Lisa was involved in another peak body group that we are also part of through the Griffith University, where we've announced that the work we've been doing on the transition indicator framework that we've been developing with our members now for the last 3 months will now be brought out into the sunlight for others to play with. And so we're very eager to hear from others who would like, particularly where you have a business constituency and or another stakeholder in civil society that would be interested in giving us feedback for that particular framework, which ultimately will go into the new WBCSD Climate Drive, which is a public platform that's going to be public digital platform that's going to be available for anyone to use in business primarily around the action levers and how to develop guidance in relation to concise net zero information that has been peer reviewed and curated. And we've been encouraged by the WBCSD to get that in as soon as possible, because it will be one of the first non-European pieces of input that's been put in by one of the network members of the BCSD network. Thanks very much.
Excellent.
Back to you, Lisa.
Very exciting. Thanks, Andrew. And I've put the image update from Evan in the chat. And we also, with other members of the corporate finance group, had a great meeting with one of Treasurer Chalmers' advisors yesterday around the sustainable finance taxonomy and transition planning and the sectoral plans and how it all links together. So lots of great minds working on that. And if anyone has any questions or wants to have a conversation with one of those great minds, please do reach out and I will redirect you, as I am not it. And next up, I will hand over to Connor from Smart Energy Council, and he is here to share some insights to the great work underway through their networks. So thanks for joining us, Connor.
Thanks, Lisa. G'day, everyone. I'm here on behalf of Richie Merzian. I guess he's been leading this work, but doesn't work on Fridays, so pass on his apologies. In terms of what's been happening for us, we had our conference last week, which was a big event, had a lot of good sessions and side events throughout. A really interesting theme that came through was gender as a theme throughout the conference, probably coming to a peak in a roundtable with Minister Bowen on the second day. So that was really positive to see. In terms of upcoming priorities, we've got obviously the May budget's big priority, and given it's going to be a cost of living budget and expecting absolutely everything through this lens, we put through a few proposals, one of the two headlines being $100 billion for renewable energy superpower and critical mineral superpower, so doing a bit of work behind that. And then the other headline on electrifying homes to reduce cost of living pressures. And then on Monday, we have a roundtable with some Australian manufacturers in the smart energy sector meeting with the Treasurer, so that hopefully will be good. In other work, the new vehicle efficiency standards has been a big topic, and we're continuing to keep pushing for strong outcome in when it's legislated, as well as that red hot on the big ask and COP31, especially Rich doing a lot of work behind COP31, some good outcomes of the conference. And then a final one is also looking into subsidies for small scale, like household batteries. And we've done a bit of modelling around this and hoping to have something later on in the year.
Excellent. Thanks, Connor. And thanks for showing up with so much energy after what I'm sure was a big week for you all. And yeah, with the big ask and all those other pieces, I think there's going to be some great opportunities to feature some Smart Energy Council members at the forum in September. So very keen to see how we can work together on that. So next up, I have the pleasure to bring back Kelly and Rochelle from ACOS after their meeting with the PM's office to give more insights to the social service sector focus and how we might support and complement your efforts there. Thanks for joining us again, Kelly and Rochelle.
Thanks, Lisa. Unfortunately, the PM's office didn't say, yeah, here's loads of money for you. Damn it. So yes, you can help us. No, look, I mean, there is loads of work going on. There's an electrification network. There's a Healthy Homes for Renters network, Healthy Homes Coalition. So there is a lot going on. I think some of the barriers we see that exist is I guess pushback still around the gas transition to electrification. So, gas companies, networks investing a lot of dollars in that space. So, and the federal government's taken this attitude that they don't want to pick a fight and regulate in that space. They talk about choice. And I guess our argument back to choices for people on low income, they actually don't have choice. If you're in a rental property, if you're on low income, you actually can't transition. Where is the choice in that? But then also having said that, we know in some migrant communities, for example, Asher from Sydney Alliance often talks about this, is that, a lot of migrant communities don't necessarily want to give up at least the gas cooktop. And so, we really need to also be having conversations with people and communities as well. So, you know, there's a mix of needing to push back at the high level with gas industry, but then also needing to have better conversations at the community level around why this is important and what the alternative is, and importantly, how do we help people with the transition. For me, are probably the two areas that we probably need to do a little bit of more work around. But, you know, funding is an issue, right, to support people to do that work. And I'm not saying it's necessary ACOS, but, you know, we need to be funding communities to have their conversations with communities around that. The other one is, I guess, implementation. The federal government are not opposed to investing, and I think they're hearing loud and clear the importance of home energy upgrades. And, you know, thank you to everybody who's been doing some great work in this space to create the enabling environment. Their view is implementation is complex, and they certainly don't want to be the ones to implement it. They're still reeling from the home insulation scheme from a few years ago. But that's why we've been doing great work with, you know, like Scott and local councils and others to look at how can we implement that. So I think at this stage, practical pilot proposals about how can we do this in different communities is what the federal government wants to hear and will consider. I don't know how helpful that was.
That was really helpful. Thanks, Kelly. And it also aligns nicely with the advice we got from Minister McBain's office a couple of weeks ago for the local government working group 2, where they suggested, and this is something we'll work towards for the forum, to adopt the template they used for the Jobs Summit, to have costings for the March budget, for how the initiatives already underway and all the great work that already exists through each of the initiatives and alliances and organizations out there already leading this work, how we can actually help the feds save money in delivering on the commitments and goals for the next term through the existing foundations. So we'll be working to consolidate some of this into some costed proposals out of the forum, and then have some policymakers in the room to discuss those in detail. So yeah, very, very keen to explore those ideas over the coming months with each of you.
And Lisa, just to add to that, we've commissioned Deloitte to do a bit of economic and social analysis of what are the benefits. So this is the investment, and thank you to ClimateWorks for the great work, like Jill in particular for the great work they've been doing in that space. We're drawing heavily on that work, and so the report will really look at, you know, what are the benefits, not just in bill savings, job creation, emission reductions, but also supporting the transition, social license, and other co-benefits as well. So that'll be coming out in the next few weeks.
Excellent. Look forward to that read. Thank you, Kelly, for supporting that work with Deloitte. Yes, and we'll include that in our next newsletter for all of those of you subscribe to that. So we'll try and consolidate, including the upcoming submissions to government consultations. So Hasmuk's just asked a helpful question in the chat there. There's lots of things happening. It's hard to keep up. So thank you to all of those of you who are engaging. And our sector working groups do exist as a means to bring together those working on on submissions to share ideas and exchange drafts and notes. So we've done that for a couple of initiatives recently with the Corporates and Finance Working Group for the AASB and the climate disclosure laws, and also climate active certification and things like that. So if there's ever any issues or submissions you're wanting to brainstorm on, or just reach out and we can see what we can do to pull something together. So the health working group gives their apologies today. So there is currently a Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water consultation workshop happening on the Global Biodiversity Framework, Australia's strategy for nature. So a couple of people are engaged in that, which is great. So hopefully we'll get some updates in the coming months on how that's all coming together, and a few other big pieces on the horizon. So let's see how we can all pull together some consistent and clear recommendations to make sure they are as positive in their impacts as possible. Thank you all for a great series of updates. We'll do our best to summarize that and share back with you where there's any synergies and areas of alignment or any gaps, and then we'll also feed that into how we plan the program for the Better Futures Forum. So Kira, if you're there, I can see your video is off and your internet is likely still struggling, but she will be following up with everyone with a survey and an email with a bit more information about the forum and how you can get involved next week. And other than that, just wanted to extend a huge thank you to each of you who put your hand up to give an update on today's call. I know it's a hard job, particularly for groups like Nature-Based Solutions and Land Use that just branches across everything. And also Linda, to you for coming in cold, really. So thank you for that. And really value all the great efforts and work that you're doing. And it's really just an inspiration to see it all come together in these collective updates. So if there's any feedback you have for us or any ideas you have for how we can improve things going forward, please do reach out to Jordan or myself. And we'll very much appreciate that, because this space is for you and the Better Futures Forum is for you, for how we can bring in those trusted messengers, those trusted voices to reach our target audiences, the parliamentarians and other decision makers across society and the economy, to really help them see the potential that's out there and the work already underway for how we can deliver our fair share under the Paris Climate Agreement. So with that, I think we'll finish with 2 minutes to go, unless there's any final words from any of you. But otherwise, keep being excellent and doing all you're doing, and we will no doubt be in touch soon. Thank you.